So when we look at the Columbian Exchange, one factor, again, there's three major factors involved in the Columbian Exchange. We have diseases, plants, animals, and then we have ideas, right? And ideas relate to ideas of economics, ideas of land use, ideas of religion, and these types of things too. Land use. How do Europeans understand this, and what are the environmental consequences? Europeans generally see the purpose of the land, the animals, and so forth as that which should serve Europeans. Europeans tend to see themselves, because largely of the religious element, they tend to view themselves as, because of the nature of the way Christianity in Europe sort of positioned Europeans in the hierarchy from the angels and God on down, humans see themselves as just above the world of plants and animals. And so there's a sense in the European world that land should be improved. And what that means is you use the land. You use the land for profit. You use the land to be improved, to build things, to mine, to farm on a massive scale. So for Europeans, they understand land use more from the standpoint of that which can sort of serve the interests of humanity. So when it comes to animals, Europeans are big into what's called animal husbandry, which would be like controlling and farming livestock, basically. Europeans create large plantations, and plantations would be the word in sort of the English areas. Haciendas would be the name of these plantation estates in the Spanish parts of America. And these are large, massive farming plantations that are based really on large-scale deforestation. And deforestation, creating large open farmlands, also will then affect the immediate environment. Plants absorb heat. Plants absorb carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide, well, CO2 actually. Plants absorb carbon dioxide, they release oxygen, they absorb heat. When you deforest on a large scale, it will change the immediate environment. So Europeans, the Columbian Exchange drives environmental consequences. Europeans see their responsibility as using the land to improve it. This means large-scale farming, plantations or haciendas, deforestation, domesticated livestock. Of course, the pig roaming free in places like the Chesapeake, around the areas of Virginia and Maryland and so forth, has a devastating consequence for the lifestyle of Native Americans who are already there. Furs, commodifying the use of animal fur by hunting and trapping, particularly the beaver. The French fur trading industry was far-flung, extending from the Great Lakes region of the St. Lawrence River to the Great Lakes in Canada, all the way out to the Rocky Mountain west. And the fur trade was so destructive that the beaver was nearly hunted to complete extinction. Likewise, animals that could not be sort of controlled, like the buffalo, for example, when railroads were developed in the 1800s across the United States, the buffalo, which is a massive animal, their herds were over the millions during their height, and the buffalo would have roamed all over the Great Plains and the Midwest, and the buffalo was hunted largely for sport and because it was a nuisance to almost complete extinction, with its population numbering maybe just over 1,000 before there were some attempts to bring it back. And today you can see the buffalo in places like Yellowstone and the Grand Tetons in Wyoming. But animals were to be controlled. Land was to be improved, which meant farming on a large scale. That meant deforestation. Domesticated livestock brought into the country. It also meant commodifying certain types of animal products for market in Europe. And during the Baroque period, for example, in Europe, the beaver pelt would have been widespread as a garment of the aristocracy. And these had devastating consequences on the environment, the Native American way of life, as well as the animals. in the Americas. Native Americans, by contrast, very much, usually, again, it's a very diverse population, and it's not to say that there are not Native Americans who did not decimate their local environment. If you look at Easter Island off the coast of South America, there's a case where Native Americans on Easter Island probably decimated their environment due to their cultural religious practices. But generally speaking, Native Americans in places like North America would have lived in a greater semblance with nature, or a greater symbiosis with nature, where they wouldn't have done mass deforestation for farming as much. And generally speaking, the animals were treated with a greater degree of reverence than would be the case, particularly in North America, of the arrival of Europeans. Another big factor is large-scale mining. Now, the mine that you see here, this is an artistic depiction of the mine at Potosi. This is a silver mine. Potosi today is in Bolivia, but at the time it would be in the greater domains of the former Inca Empire. It's still an active mine today, by the way. Potosi is a silver mine, and the Spanish control this silver mine, and the mine of Potosi produced so much silver that it created the first global exchange currency. That's why many historians say that it's this period of time in the 1500s that you see the first true case of globalization, because it's the first time where there is, if you will, a global standard of currency exchange, and it was silver. And it's because the Potosi silver mine produced so much silver that in the next hundreds of years, silver became really the primary exchange currency across the world. The mining industries, of course, and of course in Mexico, you have gold mining. There's other silver mines throughout the Americas, as well as gold mines throughout the Americas. And the mining industry was particularly devastating to Native American populations, who were forced to mine in very harsh conditions for long periods of time. They faced threats of cave-in, mercury poisoning, and the conditions in general were just very, very harsh. They were forced to be away from their families for long periods of time. Their small local farms near where they lived would go untended, and it created a great deal of hardship for Native American people. But it creates the first global exchange currency. Effectively, we're looking at right now the creation of globalization, the creation of a global world system. Other ideas. This is a photo I took on one of my trips in South America. This is in Inca, Peru, or Cusco. This is in the city of Cusco, which is the old Inca capital. And if you look closely at this picture, you can actually notice that the construction down here is different than the construction up here. And the reason for that is that this is a Catholic church, a Spanish Catholic church, built on top of the ruins of an old Inca structure. And so in this sense, this picture embodies the collision of these worlds, right? It embodies the old way of life for these people and the new sort of imposition of Christianity on the Native American people in Cusco, the old Inca capital in Peru, high up in the mountains, over 10,000 feet. Now, Native Americans in Peru, in Cusco, in the old Inca realms, or in Mexico, for example, don't just simply adopt Christianity. Though they become very Catholic and they become very, very Christian, they nonetheless do hold on to elements of native belief over time. And so you do still see differences in Native America, or differences in Catholicism in the Americas, in the former Spanish domains of the Americas. You see differences in Catholicism in the New World in these places that you might not find in places in Western Europe. And so there are differences that remain as Native American people hold on to some elements of their old cultural or religious practices. So these ideas were not simply imposed upon them, but it very much demonstrates the arrival of these new ideas, which Europeans certainly attempted to fully impose upon them. And of course, Catholicism is widespread in the Americas. And that is all relevant. That is all, evidence of the imposition of this new system of thinking and these new ideas on the people of the Americas.